Don Waring stretched his long limbs, yawned generously, and opened his eyes. Opened his eyes indeed, and stared amazedly at the sky through the trees. Stared, stared as he had never done before in his life, for Don's eyes were usually only half open. He stared without blinking till his eyes felt sore, stared with an astonishment which rarely disturbs such easy-going, indolent mortals as Mr. Don Waring. Something surely most unusual had happened. And well he might stare, for above him, among the leaves and branches, glared the rosiest sky he had ever seen. Rose, rose like the crushed leaves of the reddest roses. Rose to the north, rose to the east, rose to the south, rose to the west. A flaming, radiant, brilliant rose spread everywhere to the horizon. Intoxicating rose. Not alone at the sky did Don stare, but at the trees, the grass, the meadows beyond the woods. The trees shimmered all colors of the rose as the sunlight fell upon them, flashing in the breeze like rubies from the palest to the darkest pinks. The tall grasses bent in a wave of pink like a coral sea. The roseate meadows beyond died away in the violet mist of the hills. Alone the flowers had kept their natural hues, the snowy white marguerite, the wise golden buttercup, the passionate poppy, the gentle violet, the lily with its grave pure heart of white. Every flower maiden, so natural and as beautiful beneath the roseate sky as it had been when its leaves opened wide under heaven's blue. The woodland, the fields, the hedges, all nature was shaded in 1,000 hues of rose, and this was varied by an occasional white willow, perfect white, weeping into a rivulet which bubbled along the lazy way. Don Waring rubbed his eyes vigorously. Then he pinched himself soundly. Well, he was certainly alive and awake. By Jove, he muttered solemnly, if this is the end of the world, I'm for the goats. My sins are many, and here's one COD. And Don glanced at his watch. 4 o'clock. I promised Therese I would meet her at Oakwood Corner on High Street at 2:30. Jove, what a time to be asleep. This must be eternity. Rose, rose, rose everywhere. Very odd. And he rubbed his eyes again and repinched himself. Then he got slowly to his feet and shook himself like a big St. Bernard. Don't understand this new aspect of things, he murmured, again looking around at the pink trees and grass. Something is wrong with my point of view, I suppose. I see this world pink. Perchance somebody else sees it green. Now I wonder which of us sees it right. It is enough for me to have Therese flare up and scold without this flaming world. I suppose there's been a volcanic eruption while I slept. The sky still reflects it. And he walked off through the roseate woodland, stepping across the rivulet whose waters rippled in ribbons of pink, and so on to the high street and Therese. As he walked on, he observed that the houses had all changed since noonday when he fell asleep. More fantastic houses he had never seen. Quaint indeed. Pretty. Odd. Everything that was dainty and, well, essentially feminine in design and decoration greeted his eyes along the streets. But with all their daintiness, the windows were bare of curtains and anything suggestive of a woman's touch. The gardens were orderly and joyously luxuriant with flowers. The verandas were spacious and clean, but lacking in the feminine coziness of cushion, rocker, and hammock. Something of homeness was lacking about every mansion and cottage. Don stared much, but as staring did not alter facts, he simply sighed and walked on, thinking fondly of Therese. His thoughts were not allowed to run on peacefully. To his utter amazement, as he entered the high street, a bevy of pretty girls was standing around the door of the Horseshoe Inn, not only standing, but smoking. Smoking cigarettes, cigars, and oh, cruel fact, pipes. They laughed aloud as they joked with one another. So unseemly. Don had ever been a devotee of the eternal feminine, but for the first time in his life his nerve all but forsook him. Every one of those pretty girls turned and stared nonchalantly at him, as if he were something very superior. Or was it inferior? He was afraid to decide. He felt conscious of his tie being awry. Then he wondered if his boots had their usual shine, and he glanced stealthily down to see. He blessed his last tailor lest his coat sagged ungracefully. Indeed, he felt thoroughly and uncomfortably conscious that something was amiss with himself or his clothes, and his sensations were not pleasant, with a couple of dozen eyes scrutinizing him boldly as he approached. Not only that, but the unwantedness of girls standing around the inn door was disturbing, not to say annoying. As for their smoking, well, he was no moralist, so it mattered little. At least as Therese was not among the girls, he did not care. If Therese had been there, well, there 'twas sacrilegious to even permit the thought. Therese was the belle of the town. She was a brown-eyed girl with cheeks like twin cherries, a mass of chestnut curls which defied all conventional combing, and a spirit like an angel. Alas, and not unlike a devil at times, thought Don. But Therese, smoking? Never. Therese was a womanly woman, and had her own ideals. Fine ones, even if they were provincial. Perchance all the finer for being born and developed in the purer air of the town, so near the field flowers, the still softness of the woodlands, the peaceful, eternal hills. Therese would never smoke, no matter what other girls did. Don raised his hat nervously as he passed the inn. The bevy nodded carelessly, some of its members not even removing their pipes. After he had passed, dead silence fell on the girls, and that added to Don's discomfiture. But what had happened to this strange world? Or rather, what had happened to Don? Usually he stopped and joked with his girlfriends, but something extraordinary had befallen his nerves. He was tongue-tied. As Don was naturally a sociable, talkative man, this was most extraordinary. Don observed a number of strange things as he wandered on. Every cart, wagon, and other vehicle which clattered past on the cobblestone road was driven by a woman. In every shop only girls served. And, horror of horrors, even the barber shop was run by a woman. Indeed, the affairs of the world seemed to be in the hands of the women, and to Don they appeared to be upside down. However, Therese was all right. Whatever the world might do, Therese would always be the same sweet, lovable girl, unspoiled by any volcanic metamorphosis in social customs, or in nature, or the sky. Dear Therese. Don strode along the high street, dreaming and confident. At Oakwood Corner was a grove of trees surrounded by a high fence. The townspeople were pleased to call it a park. There at Oakwood Corner, Don stopped with a violent palpitation of astonishment. Boldly sitting on the fence with her arms crossed, nonchalantly smoking a huge cigar, was Therese. Don decided to retire unobtrusively. He shrank from embarrassing her. But on further consideration, he changed his mind. He would find out the meaning of all these queer phenomena. Therese would know, of course. Apparently she felt no shame at being seen in public smoking. Very improper. Therese had not observed him. Her attitude was one of careless ease, and she was half whistling a popular air from a recent comic opera between luxurious puffs of smoke. Certainly she appeared to be enjoying her folly, for she threw back her head and blew spirals of smoke into the air and then laughed as the wind carried them away. As Don approached her, he again felt that odd embarrassment, that cruel consciousness of his tie, his boots, his coat, where had his nerve fled? "Good afternoon, Therese," he ventured nervously. Therese swung around on the fence easily and faced him, calmly removing her cigar. "Hello, Don," she exclaimed cheerfully. "How do you do?" he returned, flushing slightly and inwardly annoyed. "I suppose I shall have to throw this away," she observed coolly, even reluctantly, laying her huge cigar on a post. Don laughed somewhat hysterically. "Suppose? Well, I should think so," said he. "Why?" asked Therese, daintily wiping some ashes off her muslin sleeve with a tiny handkerchief and not paying much attention seriously to his remark. "Oh, of course it's all right. In fact, it's no matter. Certainly." Don's meaning was somewhat involved. He felt he was on the edge of deep water and scrambled out. "Sorry I'm late," he added hurriedly. "That's nothing," remarked the little woman carelessly. "Just your usual. Putting on a new tie, I presume. It looks very nice." "I fell asleep under the trees," he began apologetically. "Never mind, dear," came her quick and rather surprising rejoinder. "We women always have to wait for you men. You are a vain lot, forever prinking." "Well, that's better than smoking," rejoined Don with spirit. Therese opened her eyes in amazement. "Smoking? Why, what's wrong with that?" "Wrong? Why, everything is wrong with that." Don's courage forsook him with Therese's big brown eyes so sternly fixed upon him. He stopped abruptly. "You never objected before," she said slowly. "And that is a poor explanation. How is a woman to spend her time when she has nothing to do if she does not smoke?" Don was shocked. Was Therese mad? "You never smoked before," he said quietly. "Never smoked before? Why, I have been smoking straight along ever since you knew me. You're dreaming." And she laughed. "Wake up, Don. Come out from under the trees." "Therese, that's not true. If you have smoked, you never let me know." The girl climbed down off the fence in a very boyish fashion and faced him boldly. "Don Waring, you accuse me of telling a falsehood. If you don't choose to remember or believe, our friendship had better end." Don's heart began to beat uncomfortably. "I simply tell the truth as I know it," said he. "You never smoked before, to my knowledge." "Then your memory is still asleep under the trees," remarked Therese. "I guess it is," smiled Don equivocally. "Anyway, why shouldn't I smoke?" demanded Therese. "Every woman smokes. Women have been smoking ever since this age began. Why shouldn't they?" Don wondered what age, as he answered firmly, "It is a man's privilege and pleasure." "A man's?" cried Therese, astonished. "Why, there isn't a man in town who smokes, or if he does, he smokes in secret, where women cannot pry. No gentleman ever smokes." Don burst out laughing, and then stopped in the midst thereof as he remembered the Horseshoe Inn and the bevy of girls. What did all these things mean? "I expect we had better change the subject," broke in Therese. "Tea may be a pleasanter topic than smoking. It is late now. Come along to the brass tea kettle and have afternoon tea." And herewith Don received another shock. Therese had never suggested afternoon tea before, or any other paid-for pleasure for that matter. It struck Don as rather original, bold in fact. Not that he objected, but it was not what a man looked for in the woman he adored. However, as Therese wished it, so it must be, and they started down the high street, Therese in the gayest of spirits, and Don involved. Don's distress did not decrease with this change of events, for every girl who met them smiled knowingly at the little woman by his side, and nodded in like fashion. This was growing unbearable. "How rude those girls are!" he exclaimed sententiously. "Not at all," replied Therese. "I feel flattered." "Flattered at what?" inquired her companion. "Walking with so handsome a man. You look your best today, Don." The man gave up being surprised at Therese. She had never made a remark like that before. However, possibly the rose-pink sky had something to do with it. Certainly the sky had not changed since he had wakened under the roseate trees. As for Therese, Don's thoughts became wrapped in gloom and mystery. As they entered the brass tea kettle, Don observed that there were present a greater number of men than girls, the reverse of the usual. In every corner of the room, men sipped tea at the little round tables, men exquisitely groomed, with the flashiest of ties and the daintiest of boutonnieres, men strangely effeminate, and the few girls who were present ogled the men in a very forward fashion, while the latter seemed to be rather shy and inclined to the nervous snigger. Therese met with the pleasant nods on every side. As for Don, the female world expressed open admiration, and Don, with the courage of a Daniel among lions, nerved himself to the occasion. Therese ordered the tea. Therese jollied the men waiting, for men served in the brass tea kettle for the first time. Therese tipped the waiter. Therese paid the bill, and Don secretly, solemnly pinched himself under the table to see if he were alive. Don was overwhelmed. "Therese, this is too much of a good thing," he protested, holding out his hand for the bill. "This is my affair," came the quick rejoinder. "Nonsense," snapped Don with annoyance. Therese laughed softly. "So long as the world, good taste and chivalry rule, women must play their part in womanly fashion. We serve you men. Who ever heard of a gentleman paying for a woman? Fancy, Don, what my friends would think of me if you bought seats for me at the theater and paid for the supper afterward." "Well, that is the way it ought to be," exclaimed her companion indignantly. "Rubbish! We women do the work. We are paid for it. Why shouldn't we treat you men to what pleasures we can afford? Our life is so free, and you are so hampered with social duties, calling, etc. It is the least we can do to brighten your lives." And Therese picked up her dainty cane as they left the tea room. "What next?" cried Don, half angry, half amused. "Women's rights, women's suffrage, women's—" and then he exploded with laughter. "You are utterly incomprehensible today." And Therese snapped the head off of a dandelion with her cane. "Why do you laugh? No manly man would hesitate to let a woman pay his way in the world. 'Tis a woman's right. 'Tis only chivalrous to take a woman's money and spend it as he pleases. I don't understand you." "Small wonder," laughed Don. "I'm just thinking of how funny it would be if women clothed and fed their husbands and children. Fancy the woman buying everything while her husband spent his money as he liked. Imagine her paying doctor's bills, gas bills, and water rates, and generally being the drudge and banker of the family." "Well, you laugh at what actually exists. Every woman in this town, with few exceptions, is doing that. Why shouldn't she? 'Tis the way of the world." "Then the world has changed for the worse," returned Don firmly. "Simply your point of view, Don. It may have been otherwise at one time, but who knows which is the right way?" "Don't, please," pleaded Don. "I can't stand any more women's rights." Therese just gave him a mystifying smile. They walked on in silence for some time. It was a sweet, sunny day, just a day for a long automobile ride. The wind rustled the treetops and skipped over the lawns, then ran away and hid among the flowers. Out it came again and puffed into the faces of the wayfarers, tempting them to laughter and to talk. With the exhilaration of the day, Don was on the verge of suggesting a drive when suddenly a remarkable airship, of very handsome appearance, swung around the corner of the street, and it settled down beside them. "Here's our car," cried Therese gaily. "Ours?" gasped Don, gazing at the fine, comfortable airship in astonishment, with its gay brass fittings and luxurious cushions. "Yes, I ordered it. Jump in, dear, and let us away to the pink fields and wild flowers. I am longing for a whirl through the country air." Don stepped in without more ado. He had never been in an airship before. In fact, he had never seen one except in pictures. So far, only experts and inventors sailed in them. Don felt very nervous on Therese's account, but the latter jumped in as if she had never traveled in anything else, and an airship was as easy to run as a baby carriage. And to Don's horror, she dismissed the aviator, a woman. "My treat?" begged Don feebly. "Nonsense," smiled Therese as she waved her hand to the aviator and started the ship, sailing upward over the roofs of the houses and into the roseate country. "You are only a man," she said presently. "Well, and why not?" asked Don, holding his breath as they flew over a lake. "Oh, I'm satisfied," remarked Therese, just steering past the boughs of a huge oak tree. "Thank you," said Don mildly. "Aren't these airships a great improvement on the old autocars? Everyone is trying to sell the old things now and purchase an airship," remarked Therese. "Some awful accidents happen." "Oh, it's wonderful great!" exclaimed Don enthusiastically. And then, as they suddenly whirled across an inlet of the sea, where the surf was pounding among the rocks in a wild, hungry roar, and he beheld another aircraft rapidly sailing from an opposite direction, he asked with an inward quake, "Yes, I should imagine some accidents might happen." "I'm glad you like it," rejoined Therese, calmly waving her handkerchief as they shot close past the other airship. "There go the Spencer Leightons. Haven't they got a swell airship? Goes 60 miles an hour, sometimes 80. "Gee!" exclaimed Don, aghast. He knew better now than to remark at any strange thing or happening, and hid his secret shudders as the airship darted over treetops and windmills. "Regulation speed is 40 miles an hour, but people haven't changed since the old days of the autocar, and lots of them rush through the air at a terrific speed. It's not fair to the grocer ships and the butcher ships, and thus the accidents. It keeps the airship policemen busy. You see, there is so much commerce and traffic in the air now, they are starting an airship express company, as the trains do not go fast enough. You know, the airship streetcar system in London is paying enormous dividends. And in New York, people won't travel in anything else." And Therese increased their speed till the air whistled and sang around them. "We shall have a cozy time together, dear," said she, after a while. Don smothered an exclamation at this audacity and simply said, "Oh, of course." Away into the country flew the airship. And what a wonderful world of pinks and reds it was. Woodlands, meadows, streams, lakes, all blending in rare and beautiful shades of sunset hues. "Wonderful!" exclaimed Don as he gazed over the roseate landscape. "One would think you had never seen the country before," said Therese, as they darted across an island-dotted lakelet and struck over the tops of a dense wood. "Neither I have in these shades," he answered carefully. "What shades?" demanded Therese. "Pinks and reds and crimsons?" Therese laughed. "It has always been pink and red and crimson." "Love and a woman make it so," murmured Don. After which, to his surprise, Therese pressed his hand, which Don reciprocated with fervor, and the woods grew redder than ever. The fields were massed with daisies and buttercups. A sea of coral set with topaz and pearl. Streams of water twinkled in the sunshine, bubbling over pebbles in 1,000 shades of ruby. Branches of trees met in a maze of rosy leafage, glancing in light or shade as the sun fell upon them. Crimson hedges railed the fields into a velvet checkerboard. Hills rolled away to the horizon in a roseate glow, dying in an opalescent wave of light gold and garnet. Groves of trees, robed as if in autumnal dress, wreathed their various shades like jeweled coronals, or splashed the hillside like heart's blood. Here and there a wayside pond or creek reflected the glory of coral, ruby, and garnet, weaving endless lacework of leaf and reed and bough. 'Twas a wondrous, rosy world. Out in the fields, girls worked in the warm sunlight. Some were plowing, some cutting the long grasses with a scythe, some piling new-mown hay, rusty pink hay. Some tended the orchard trees. Girls, girls, girls. Don almost forgot his cherry-cheeked Therese in his admiration of the numerous pretty girls in the fields. "We shall descend here," said Therese presently, as the airship began to settle down gracefully into a flowered meadow beside a tiny lake. As they touched ground, she leapt out with boyish agility. "And now for a run in the meadows. But first my pipe. You don't mind my smoking?" Don frowned aggressively. "Not that, Therese." "And why?" came her cool query. "For the same reason I gave before. Women should not smoke. It is masculine, unwomanly, ungraceful," returned Don sententiously. "You are not the first man who protested. But so long as you do not smoke, I don't care." And Therese lit her pipe and puffed easily and contentedly, to Don's horror. "I won't budge if you don't stop that." And he leaned against a tree and looked sternly at the little woman. "Everywhere I see girls working, smoking, and not a man to be seen. Nevertheless, I object to your smoking on every ground. If you continue blowing at that horrid pipe, I'll blow too." Therese laughed gaily. "No, sir, you won't do that. What would the people say?" "Oh, hang the people!" "Don!" reprovingly. "Well?" Then Therese settled herself on the stump of an oak tree as if to read him a lecture, and said gravely, "Men should look handsome and dress well and please the eye of a woman. That's enough. Don't spoil it by smoking. We women admire your handsome figures, your fine faces, the set of your tie, the tilt of your hat, the hang of your coat. Come, dear boy, don't spoil what nature meant to be so attractive to women by smoking. It is not manly." Don removed his hat, ran his fingers through his hair, and sighed desperately. "Therese, what does all this mean?" And he waved his hands towards the rosy fields. "The reign of woman," answered she calmly. "Not the golden age," suggested Don mischievously. "No, the roseate age, woman's age," exclaimed Therese joyously. "The world runs on oiled wheels. The sky is full of hope. The woods are rich in hope. The sea overflows with hope. Warm, glowing hope. Wonderful hope." "And for what?" meekly asked Don, half smiling. "For the reason that it exists," returned Therese in a patronizing tone, glancing with pity at her companion for his lack of knowledge. "Men got worn out, mentally and physically, piling fortunes, working all day and all night to pay milliners, modistes, masseuses, and nerve sanitariums. They degenerated to pygmies in will, intellect, physique. There are only a few men, real men, left. That is why all the girls are after you." "Me?" exclaimed Don, losing his breath. "Why, yes. Proposal, don't you know? Only you are engaged," said Therese lightly. "To whom, pray?" begged Don, with a Moses-like calm. "To me," came her savoir-faire reply. Hope you don't object to this line of tobacco. Best I could get." "Oh, no," murmured Don, bewildered, comprehending at last why so few men were about the world, and also Therese's cool possession of himself. "You know that I proposed to you, Don." "Did you?" laughed he, hysterically. "Of course," from Therese, somewhat indignantly. "And when?" he continued in ecstasy. "Now don't be saucy, boy," and Therese shook her finger at him. "Saucy? By Jove, I was longing to tell you how I loved you ages ago and to propose, but feared you are not a modest man," interrupted Therese. "It is a woman's place to make love, to propose, and other such things." Whereupon Don tried to slip his arm around her waist. "Don't forget yourself," reproved Therese sternly. Don glanced lovingly at the trim little woman tripping along beside him in her sweet white muslin gown and hat of marguerites. "So men are done for, city men too?" he inquired, to change the subject, which had grown somewhat complicated. "Oh, they are awful, so affected, so luxurious, all nerves, culture, and emotions. You are such a dear, simple country fellow, so true, so natural. That is why I love you. City men are unnatural, like forced fruit, hothouse creatures. None for me, please." And Therese flicked some ashes off her muslin dress and tossed her head knowingly. "And the women?" ventured Don, bent on gaining what knowledge he could of this new world. "Oh, the women are piling up the money and making the laws and playing toss and catch with the stock market. Women are steering the airships, hunting the gold mines, inventing—" "Same as the men did," interrupted he, half sarcastically. "Yes," enthusiastically. "And the end?" inquired Don quizzically. "Roseate glory, eternal happiness," exclaimed the enthusiast, her brown eyes sparkling with delight. "And if the women and the men continue thus?" And Don could have kissed the little face upturned so hopefully to him. "We are living in eternity now," smiled Therese confidently. "And the women will not degenerate as the men?" asked Don humbly. "How could they?" demanded she haughtily. "A woman's reason?" sighed Don. "And why shouldn't they, I would like to know?" "Because—" and Therese stopped short. And then Therese threw her arms around his neck, and the man responded with great heartiness, forgetting the cigar, remembering only the woman's lips, her lips so red and sweet, red as the rose-colored world. "If this is to live in the woman's world, may it continue forever," he cried ardently, holding her tenderly in his arms. And then Don awoke. "How dare you?" broke suddenly on his ears. "You horrid man! And we are not even engaged!" And someone struggled out of his arms. "Dear me," laughed Don, opening his eyes wide. "I thought we were engaged." And then, as he glanced amazedly at the green leaves overhead and at Therese's blushing face of discomfiture, he added, "I was going to hint about it today, but as you proposed—" "I didn't do anything of the kind," indignantly protested Therese. "You're half asleep." "Asleep!" Don stretched out his arms toward her. Therese retired. "Yes, you have been sleeping here under the trees." "And you came to find me?" said he, advancing toward her. "No, I didn't." Therese turned her head away, very dignified. "Then I have been asleep in a rose-colored world. But small wonder, with you so near. It was love that colored my dream." "What dream?" from inquisitive Therese. "My dream of the reign of woman in the rose-colored world," Don returned, adding deliberately, "and about the day, Therese." But Therese fled away among the trees.